Um, Recording. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer, and I am a mediator here at the Colorado Council, or I'm so sorry, the Accord, which is the Agency for Conciliation and Compromise of Rifts and Disputes, also known as the Accord. We are a nonprofit organization, and we're funded through a grant of public policy developing alternatives of litigation to disputes. So with that being said, if you guys could just introduce yourselves really quick, that would be great.
My name's Emily, and I am Mary's union representative.
And I am Mary, and I am a laser operator.
I'm Teresa, I'm the plant manager.
I'm Noelle, I'm the personnel director.
And my name is John Jump. That's all you get.
Okay. Thank you, John. Okay, so just a few things. My role here for you guys today is to facilitate a conversation between you parties, all right? So yes, I am a resource for you, and I'm here to offer, movement of conversation. However, I just need to put out there, I am not an attorney, and I do not make any legal representations, or I do not want to say or will not try to say anything that will interfere with your choice as a party to make a decision and to come to a resolution together. So with that said, my role, I'm here to facilitate. I'm here to help you guys come to a resolution. Hopefully that is, to not be super cliche, but a win-win for everybody here. So with that being said, just because Mary's at the top of my screen here, would you, I'm so sorry, Mary's representative, Emily, that's you, correct?
Yes.
Would you kindly just say what the reason is you're here today for?
Well, thank you very much for being here, Jennifer, and helping to facilitate this conversation. I am hopeful that we can come to an agreeable solution here for Mary, who has really been, I think, treated poorly in this situation. I hope that her former employer, Econ, can see its way to making this right. Mary has been the victim of sexual harassment at work. She has not been employed for the past 8 weeks, and we believe that these actions by Econ and by her former supervisor are in violation of both federal and state law, and as such, she should be reinstated to her job if she so chooses, but with back pay. And there was an inappropriate written warning put in her file, her employee file, that we believe should be removed. And in addition, she has received the training opportunities that would enable her to qualify for a lead laser operator position. And we believe that she should be next in line to be awarded the next opening of that position that comes available, commensurate with her experience and her training.
And we would like to specify that Mary was not let go. Mary left of her own accord.
So maybe we can now start, plant manager, if you would like to say why you think you are here.
We really would like to resolve the conflict, both with Mary's conflict with the company, but also seemingly there's conflict between Mary and John. They did work together. I know that Mary is stating that there was some sexual harassment, but it's our understanding that Mary and John engaged in a consensual relationship, and that Mary leaving was potentially predicated upon the end of that relationship, not having anything to do with the organization or anything we've done.
Mary, thank you, plant manager. I appreciate that testament there. Definitely writing some notes down and hearing different sides. Mary, is that how you see it as well?
I mean, I agree with everything that my union representative said. Yeah, I'm just gonna go with what she had to say there. she's my counsel. I'm going to take her advice.
And Noelle, would you like to offer your side of this as well, please?
Yeah, so along with what Teresa, the plant manager, had said, upon hearing about this grievance and seeing this grievance from Mary, we did an internal investigation upon receiving this grievance, and we came to some facts, and we learned from some of Mary's and John's coworkers that this relationship was very well known within our company, and that Mary and John had been a little bit public about their relationship. They had had some public displays of affection and things like that that other coworkers were able to see. And we do know that Mary, after this relationship had ended, it seemed that Mary had demonstrated some poor work quality after this relationship ended. And John noticed, who is her supervisor, noticed that unsatisfactory work and did write her up for that. And then 2 weeks later, Mary did quit her job with us at this company. So like I said earlier, that coworkers were aware of John and Mary. They did a lot of activity in the parking lot, whether that was holding hands, kissing, things like that. They had public displays of affection at the water cooler, and that training opportunities were given to Mary because of her relationship with John.
Thank you. I appreciate a lot of that information. That was really helpful. John, I would love to hear your side of this as well.
Thank you very much. I guess it's hard for me to say that Mary got opportunities because of our relationship. She was skilled at what she did, which is why I gave her those opportunities. And then, her skill level did start to fall off, which I wrote her up for as her supervisor. I was trying to keep everything on the level in both ways. She didn't get unnecessarily put into that training position, and she didn't unnecessarily get put into the position where she was written up for work as well. So it was a consensual relationship between us. It didn't work out, but that was not the impetus behind any of the actions I took on a professional level.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, so upon hearing all this, I just want to recap a little. And from what I've heard a couple of suggestions to a resolution that would help out Mary, and I would love to hear some suggestions from the employer side as well about a resolution. But from Mary, I heard that, as said by Emily, being reinstated with back pay, the training that you did receive, Mary, as an employee would promote you. So we would like to see that as well, I hear. And then I heard also that the letter in the file that would like to be removed. Did I miss anything there?
Those are our main requirements, yes.
Okay, great. And then either Noelle or maybe the plant manager, if you could, where do you see this ending up? How do you see this being a positive outcome for you?
Well, first, before we get to outcomes, I did want to just seek a little bit of clarification. I know that John has stated that this was consensual. I wanted to get verification on Mary's point of view on that, because she has deferred to her agent, her union rep, and I just want to know, because that'll have a significant impact on the allegations at hand.
Well, yes, I can definitely speak to that. Our relationship definitely was consensual from the beginning. I definitely agree with that. But at some point, I was uncomfortable with all of the PDA at work. And I tried to cool it down a little bit when he started making requests that I wasn't comfortable with and trying to get us to go further than I was comfortable with. And he got mad at me and he walked away visibly disappointed, and people could have seen that I wasn't comfortable with that.
Emily, I'm so sorry. Mary, could you speak a little bit more to that last altercation?
Yeah, so I said I wanted to slow things down, kind of moderate the relationship, and then we argued, and then he walked away, and then I mean, later on, he ended up starting a relationship with someone else, and then that's why we broke up. But before that, things had already been rocky.
And where did this altercation take place?
I think if I remember correctly, I think it was at work. Yeah.
And I would like to add that when the relationship ended, my understanding of the situation is the sexual harassment that is both violating, we believe, federal and state law, as well as Econ's own policy on sexual harassment, began and or continued rather at that point, past the end of the relationship. And after a couple of weeks of that, she did tender her resignation. She quit the job, but under current existing law, an employee who quits their employment because of unwelcomed sexually offensive behavior that can no longer be tolerated, they can be found to have been constructively discharged. So the fact that she may have resigned because of that unwelcome sexual harassment does not mean that she voluntarily gave up her employment. So that could be construed as a constructive discharge under existing law.
So that I'm understanding the timeline correctly, this altercation, Mary, that you were just talking about, after you said you wanted to cool things down, there was a period of 2 weeks after that of where the sexual harassment suit is coming from. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes.
Could you speak a little bit to the types of behavior that you experienced at that time, and if there's anything you'd like to say to the group about that?
Yeah, I mean, it was just the requests that I wasn't comfortable with, and then I couldn't. He wrote me up, and I didn't feel like that was fair. I mean, you're never going to be comfortable getting written up by an ex. That never feels fair. I don't know. That's about as much as I can speak on that. I don't know if my representative has anything more on that.
John, how does that story line up with your interpretation of those events?
It kind of upsets me, and I feel that this is retaliatory in nature. If she was willing to take on these training opportunities without any ideas of a quid pro quo, I'm wondering why she then thinks that a write-up, when it was obvious that her work performance was deteriorating, then constitutes sexual harassment. As she already mentioned, it was a consensual relationship. I was not asking for any kind of specific sexual favor or anything like that in return. We did part ways. I did start seeing another woman, and that was the end of it. And as I see it, that made her upset. She quit working so hard. I had to write her up as a supervisor after I'd already kind of promoted her to my supervisors. And again, this just really feels kind of retaliatory and almost as if she's just trying to, bring a defamation kind of thing against me.
So
thank you.
I have a couple of questions. Firstly being, do either of you, Mary or John, see the problematic nature of having a relationship with a subordinate or a supervisor?
If I could jump in, I certainly do. And it wasn't really apparent to me until all of this happened. And I do see the problem. I do remember now, though, that right around the time that we implemented this policy that Mary's bringing against us, there was another supervisor that had written up somebody they had a romantic relationship to. So I know that this isn't the first time this happened within this company. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I just know that there is precedent for this.
Maybe the personnel director could speak more to that as far as your policies and what Econ's policy is to that.
Yeah, so about 2 years ago, we implemented a policy against sexual harassment. And part of that policy is we want an environment that's free from sexual harassment and things like that. But also part of that policy is that victims, and this is pretty firm, and we're pretty firm on this, that victims must report the sexual harassment to their direct supervisor, or directly to me, the personnel director. And that upon that disclosure, we would then facilitate a mediation. And it is our position, and we have all stated that the first time that I learned about this sexual harassment or this claim was a grievance that was filed by Mary. So, and we do have, there was some individuals that came forward that Mary had talked to her coworkers about Mary being upset about how the relationship ended. But our policy is very clear that the victim must come to their direct supervisor, which in this case would be John. And so probably not the best situation, but then would need to come to me. And that did not take place. Mary did not come to me. I learned about this situation through a grievance that she filed. So our policy is very clear that we want an environment, we want a workplace that is free from this activity and this kind of conduct, but that there are some steps that need to be taken when when this conduct does take place.
And Mary, when you reported, did you know about the policies already set? Were you aware and trained in those at the time?
I mean, I knew about the policy, but it didn't feel like it was going to do me any good because my direct supervisor was the person that had written me up.
Right.
And he
Correct.
was.
But you also have
That's
the
half the
alternate.
policy.
That's correct, because we also do offer an alternative for precisely these types of situations.
But Mary did contact me as her union rep, and I spoke to the personnel director, and the union representative has the authority to act on behalf of the employee when there is a conflict.
She was no longer an employee at the time that was made. So you can see how it would appear retaliatory. She had left employment. She was no longer an employee when that was made.
But she was no longer an employee because of the sexual harassment that would make it unlikely for her to go to her direct supervisor or even the personnel director if she knew that things like this had occurred in the past.
But I'm unsure how that tracks, where she had said that she didn't think it would achieve anything to report it, and yet here we are now with the reporting. We absolutely want people to report sexual harassment 100% of the time, but not in a retaliatory fashion. It needs to be while she's employed so that we can do an investigation of both parties.
Well, I would argue that perhaps she didn't feel. Oh, go ahead.
Plant manager, how would you expect to do an investigation while the employee is still working underneath the harasser, or accused harasser?
Well, and there would be opportunities. I mean, we have a first shift, a second shift. We're working on a new location as well. There's also opportunities to be on paid administrative leave while it's done. But I think that both parties need to own their part in this. I don't think I would be remiss to say Mary knew that what she was engaged in was against company policy, but also Mary.
Well, was there a specific company policy about dating subordinates? Okay,
Well,
thank you.
Can I
So
add one thing really quick?
Yes, please.
I just want to, Mary had mentioned earlier that she was aware of the policy, and I just want to be clear that our policy was posted on our bulletin board for everyone to see. So I want to make it very clear that this policy was available to everyone, including Mary at the time, that she must report to her direct supervisor or to me.
And Noelle, is
Okay,
there a policy regarding dating subordinate, or inter employer relationships?
We have several different policies. We do have a conflict of interest policy, which I think this potential relationship would fall under, that John, being Mary's supervisor, is a conflict of interest, that if Mary is being promoted and John is supervising her, but they're also in a romantic relationship, that would qualify as a conflict of interest. However, no, we don't have anything specifically saying a supervisor cannot date who they supervise, but through our conflict of interest policy, I think that would be where you would find this information.
Okay.
And I'd also like to clarify that we're not in any way saying that this is all Mary's fault. This is clearly both of them. But I need both parties to accept that they've made some poor choices. And I think it's no secret here. Mary knew that John is also married. He is not a single man. So she has chosen not only to engage with her supervisor, but also with a married man.
Well, he's the married one that
Yes.
chose to engage in a relationship.
Which is precisely why I'm saying they both need.
If I could jump in here, exactly. As the plant manager is saying, we both made some mistakes here. I tried to handle it the best that I could. I think that Mary did too. I will admit that as a supervisor, I should have had a little more foresight in this matter. But I did try to handle it to the best I could as a professional capacity.
I appreciate that concession, John. That definitely helped level the field. Mary, how do you feel about that?
I mean, I'm sitting here and I'm getting attacked for having a relationship with this married man, but right after he broke up with me, he went and dated someone else. So that he was my boss. He's almost double my age. I don't know how you are putting all this pressure on me when I was in this position to begin with.
Absolutely. So let's get down to brass tacks and talk about what needs to be done on both parties here. Obviously, we know that you want to be reinstated. Apparently, you want a promotion and you want the letter removed. What I think would be appropriate, you have a very good work history with us with only one letter of reprimand when potentially your work was not as well done as it had previously been. There's nothing that would prevent us from rehiring you if you wish to reapply. However, we certainly couldn't have you on the same shift as John. And we would absolutely have to have something in writing that says, I understand that there should not be a relationship with a coworker, specifically a supervisor or somebody that I have an unequal footing with. I mean, obviously a lot of people meet their spouses at work, but if you're going to engage in an inappropriate relationship where there is an imbalance or where a party is not available, there needs to be something in there that acknowledges that, hey, I understand that this is not acceptable. Now, by doing that, we've not said that you have engaged in that, because that definitely would be something negative in your file, and that's not what we're looking for. We would like to move forward from this as a learning opportunity, and that doesn't mean that we're not going to have similar issues for John. This is just me trying to address, you have the complaint currently, and I'm trying to address the things that you have requested. So that's where I'm trying to make it clear that you do not have a bad work file with our organization. You are absolutely welcome. And you know, we have that new facility that's coming up. That might be a really good opportunity because it is separate from John. And it does provide future opportunities as well.
Teresa, if I may ask a question, and maybe Noelle, you could offer an answer to this as well. Because there is no policy regarding dating between employees, I'm curious to how the letter, admonishing Mary about her choices as choosing her partners, how that would reflect a lack of policy in the actual employer's, rule book.
I don't necessarily think it would be admonishing her choice. It's just more of her acknowledging that there are repercussions should there be a conflict of interest relationship, much as Noelle had stated before. This would fall under a conflict of interest.
And then would John as well receive a letter in his file?
Absolutely, as well as continued training. He certainly would need to do some training on what is appropriate, what is not, and what poses a threat to the company as a whole and his employment.
And Mary, how do you feel about what Teresa's just said?
I just think that going forward, that would kind of put a mark on me. I mean, people come and go from a company, and someone I've had a relationship with would still be there, and people would make connections to that, and it just wouldn't be good for me, I don't think.
So would returning back to or going to another shift or using another facility, is that not something you see yourself doing as an option?
I wasn't the person in power here, so I don't understand why I should be the one that has to
change.
Yeah.
Can I offer a potential solution or some maybe next steps or something that we can talk about? So we do know and we are aware that John is having some family issues. His wife is very ill and is having to take care of her full time. And right now, John is unable to work the second shift. And so, me and Teresa, the plant manager, were kind of talking about what a good resolution of this might be. And we know that Mary has traditionally worked the first shift and has done very well at that and is, very good at her job. And so maybe a solution that we could come up with is, I know, Mary, you don't want to go to second shift because both of you have made choices that affect what is happening right now. But I wonder if you are willing to go to second shift and John stayed on first shift, and we might be able to promote you to the position that you wanted to be in for taking that second shift, which I know is not ideal for you. So I wonder if there was any way to...
May I ask?
So is there a lead laser operator position available right now in second shift? Is that something she would be able to just step into?
It sounds like yes, there would be a promotion opportunity in that second shift availability because currently John is in that lead role on second shift, but if he goes to first shift, there would be an opening on second shift. But I know that Mary, you had just said that that's not ideal for you, but we do value your work, and we do understand that this is not the situation we want for anyone. My big philosophy is, like Teresa said, that, we do recognize that there were poor choices made, but at least I want to give you another opportunity to kind of make up for, what has happened here.
And I would also like to state that there very much would be an amendment to the posted rules specifically stating that these types of relationships are not appropriate, because realistically, we also want to prevent these types of issues from happening in the future.
Okay. Noelle, I appreciate that solution. That sounds Mary and maybe Emily as her representative could speak to the likelihood of that being a possible option. I know there's still a couple of other issues. To me, it sounds, if you do this, then you do that, you get the promotion, right? However, you have already completed the trainings, correct?
Yes.
And as coordinator of personnel, is that typically the only requirement to be eligible for promotion, is completing the trainings?
Well, I'd like to also remind you that John had said he had not promoted her and moving her up, but had promoted her to his coworkers as being a viable option for this type of position. I'm sorry, Noelle, I cut in there.
Oh, you're fine. So back to, yes, trainings are typically what we need. We also like to see a substantial amount of time that you're working in your current position and have had satisfactory work. We do recognize that with the situation, John did write her up for unsatisfactory work. And so that is something that we would need to parse out if that was because of the relationship. But
she has as plant manager mentioned earlier, I mean, she has a 5-year work record, absolutely sterling work record, besides this one potentially biased warning in her file. So,
and I would also say that a single warning is not something that would preclude somebody from attaining a job or a promotion.
Well, that sounds great. Mary, I know you're hearing a lot of things. How are you feeling about possibly taking over that role in the second shift and still changing, your schedule for this?
I mean, it's definitely not ideal for me, but I don't necessarily want to have to work with John when I don't feel safe there regularly anyways. But I think that going back to work with a written warning in my file from my ex romantic interest just doesn't feel fair to me. I don't see that as working out at all.
So in your file, and maybe Noelle, you can speak to this, are there two write-ups then, one for denoting the relationship and one for the alleged poor work, or is it all just one complaint we're looking at?
On our side, it is just one. I don't even want to say complaint. It's just one check on her record. Yeah, it's just one piece of information. So it's not two separate issues. It is one issue that we have, that we have the written warning, and it was just a warning about her unsatisfactory work. And then we have the subsequent later on in this same issue, this complaint with the sexual harassment. So it is just stemming from the one.
I'm wondering, because I heard so much about joint decision making, and Mary, you acknowledged that, John, you acknowledged that this, it was a consensual relationship that you both chose to be in. I'm wondering if we can all find a solution that there's still something in the file that appeases, wanting to make it a learning lesson and, having something on record, but it being representative of both of the parties' actual feelings and perception of the incident. So if there's any way to change it to reflect, not that Mary was choosing the wrong thing or, promoting a negative perception, and not making out, the supervisor being the poor choice either, but something in between that.
Yeah, I think in our system, we have the opportunity to edit and to change these things. So I think what I would propose is that we work with Emily, the union rep, and Mary and John. I think we all need to be involved in this, in potentially rewriting and or submitting declarations or some sort of written material from Mary and from John that we can put within this issue, so to say, so that Mary has her full voice voiced in this issue and John has his whole voice issued or represented in this issue. And then if Emily, the union rep, has anything to add, we could also include that in this file as well.
So John, I haven't heard from you in a minute. How does that sound?
I think that my main concern is just that I don't switch shifts. As was mentioned, I do need to care for my wife at night. So I guess as long as this just stays within the company and I don't switch shifts, I'm happy with any solution. And that includes me acknowledging in a written formal way that, what I did was a poor choice of judgment, and I will never do anything in the future akin to this behavior.
So, Mary, how does that compromise, or not necessarily compromise, how does a rework of what goes in your file sound like to you?
I think that if we reworked it a little bit, but then also John just offered to admit his fault, and if we included that piece of information in my file next to the write-up with his name at the bottom, I think that would be okay with me.
And so Emily, as her representative, do you have anything to add to that sentiment?
Of course, we would want to very carefully review the statement, because a written warning about unsatisfactory work performance without the context of this relationship gone sour could certainly cast a different light on her skills and abilities to do the job, which is, what she wants to be employed for. So we would have to very carefully parse that statement, but we can certainly explore options.
Great.
So potentially we could just do a joint statement where they both acknowledge that they are going to, just something that says basically they're going to ensure that their work relationships are appropriate. And speaking to the whole issue of the second shift, I do want to remind you there is that new plant that'll be open in 30 days where first shift is available. That is something you can apply for. So
is that
way
a first shift as a supervisor or as the promoted position?
It's a brand new facility, so all positions are open there.
I haven't heard anything about that. I don't know how far away from that. I don't know how that would affect my life. So
the new plant is 35 miles away. In the beginning, the pay is 90% of what's being paid here, but that's because it is cutting edge and you'd likely be advancing more quickly. It's a lot of our protected structures and processes. So it's brand new, state-of-the-art, cutting edge, where we're going to create new things. So in working there, we acknowledge that, yes, it's 90% pay in the beginning, but with the opportunity for advancement potentially more rapidly. But that, again, would alleviate your issue where you don't want to do second shift. You would have first shift then.
Now, you mentioned at one point that Mary would have to reapply for these positions. That is not acceptable
I think
to Mary. We would, go ahead, please.
I was just going to say, under my proposed solution as the personnel director, when I did this investigation, I proposed that Mary would not have to reapply, that initially that would have been where we would have gone if we could not have come up with a solution. But I think if Mary is willing to go to second shift and or go to this building another plant that's 35 miles away, we would be willing to just transfer her to that position in a supervisory role. But if Mary did want to stay on second or on first shift at her current location, we would have to reconsider. But I think if the agreement we came to before that Mary did want to go to second shift or go to the other plant, we would just transfer her there in the supervisory role.
Mary, how does that sound to you? I didn't hear a response to the plant manager talking about the new plant. Is that still something you're not considering?
I definitely don't want to take a pay cut after this, and I don't want to drive further to work either. So the new plant is not an option, but I'm still open to the supervisory role in the second shift.
Okay.
The final demand, I guess, that we have not addressed yet is back pay. It's been 8 weeks since Mary has been out of a job now, and we feel that she should receive all 8 weeks of back pay at her at the salary she was at the time that she left the position.
I'm going to have to object to that. She left voluntarily, and she declined to use the processes that we have in place. She could forfeit her any existing vacation time or something like that she may have had, but this was her option.
Mary,
I just don't think that the 8 weeks.
The alternative, Mary, were you aware of the alternative option to talk to the personnel director rather than your direct superior?
I mean, I did. I just talked to my union rep first. So, and my union rep represented me. So that's exactly what I did. It just took.
And I would reiterate that even though she did officially resign her position and she quit, it can be construed as a constructive discharge because of the sexual harassment that led to it. That's, federal law, state law. As you know, we've already kind of talked to the EOC about options on filing a discrimination charge there. So just the fact that she said the words "I quit" does not necessarily mean it was under the law of voluntary termination.
Thank you
Noelle,
for
I'd
that.
love to hear what your thoughts are on this.
Yeah, I think this is challenging because we do have a policy in place that says Mary needs to come to her direct supervisor or the personnel director, and she just acknowledged that she did know of this policy, and she did not come to me. She went and talked to her female coworkers about how she was upset. So I'm kind of struggling with where to go because I do want to make sure that Mary feels comfortable coming back to work. However, we do know that she did voluntarily leave, and I know that her union rep, Emily, is stating that it's not necessarily always voluntary in some ways, but I'm trying to figure out a middle ground in some ways because I don't want this to go forward. I think we can try to solve it here, but I do think that Mary did quit her job, and there was unsatisfactory work. And so I'm wondering if Mary and her union rep would be willing to maybe talk about a month worth of back pay. That would be right at the middle ground, or if we could come up with a solution instead of all 8 weeks, because I think that would be really hard for us to give all 8 weeks when right now Mary did voluntarily quit her job and there was unsatisfactory work that was produced.
And I struggle a bit with the sexual harassment claim with the EEOC based on the consensual nature of this relationship. They've both acknowledged they know they've engaged in something that's not appropriate.
The sexual harassment was not during, the entire course of the relationship. It was the time period after the relationship ended that is the sexual harassment that drove her to quit.
I could jump in again and wonder why she will claim she will take advantage of training opportunities, which I gave to her because of her skill, but will not take credit for the lack of skill that prompted the written warning.
Well, again, the work performance, to my understanding, began to deteriorate during that 2-week period where she was experiencing the harassment after the relationship ended. So I would tie the decrease in the work quality to the harassment rather than anything else.
I'm sorry.
But I do appreciate the
I don't want to keep
personnel.
dragging this on, but could you describe what harassment means in this context?
Well, I'd have to defer to Mary for that, the specifics on that. But I would like to just mention that I do appreciate the personnel director talking about perhaps a month's pay. I think we can certainly come to some kind of agreement in that area. She was at $10 an hour on a 40-hour work week for 8 weeks is $3,200. How close to that number do you think you could come?
So sorry, my math is off. So you're saying 3,200 for the full 8 weeks, is that correct?
That would be the full pay for the full 8 weeks. And we would expect that her sick and vacation time would be reinstated as well.
I think we would be willing to do $1,550. I think that is very close to what she would be getting paid. That is still subject to taxes and things like that because she would be getting that if she were working. And so I think that would be reasonable for us if $1,550 sounded fair to you guys.
Well, that is a little bit less than half of the time period. So I would hope that we'd be able to come in maybe closer to the 6-week mark, even around 2,000.
I think, like we had just discussed, I think 4 weeks is ideal. So if we did, I'm get the calculator out here really quick. So 1,600 is half.
Mm-hmm.
So I do know that there are some taxes involved. So I would be willing, and I know that the vice president has said that we could factor in 1,700 because that would be a little bit over half, which is, I think, reasonable for us, is 4 weeks of back pay. And that would give a little bit of room for taxes and things like that so that Mary has some compensation for the things that she's dealt with.
Mary, how does that sound?
I think that's pretty close, but I think I need. I mean, I've been out of work for 8 weeks. I haven't been able to pay my bills. I've just been so upset the whole time.
But also remembering that you'll be making more when you come back.
Can I also propose that with that 1,700, I do know that you have potentially some sick leave and some comp time, things like that. We would be willing to, I know that it's not ideal, but we could cash out one of those banks. You have been working for us for a very long time. We could cash out one of those banks since those are hours that you've already earned. You could pick one, both, neither, but then we could add that on to the 1,700 to try to make up for the time that you've been gone.
I definitely want to keep those banks where they're at in case I need them, because things like this happen. But I think if you could come up to like 1,800, I think that I could do that.
Thank you, Mary, for offering another number, moving that forward.
I think 1,800 would be good with us. I think we can make that work.
Great job. Wow. Okay. So let me just recap a little bit about what we've kind of gotten together. Because I think we've met all of the demands, and feel free to interject, after this, if I've missed anything. So I understand this reinstatement, not necessarily reapplying, is approved, right, from our clientele director. The back pay, we agreed, was going to be 1,800 for about 5 to 6 weeks of work instead of the full 8 weeks. You will be entering into a promoted position because of the trainings you completed with the second shift, if I understand that correctly, upon your consent, and that you all as a group, and I can facilitate that as well, would rework a letter acknowledging both parties' decisions and mistakes in that relationship and in their choices from both parties.
That will go into both files, correct?
Yeah.
And then I just wanted to reiterate that we will be likely discussing a change to the company policy to make it clear that this type of conduct is not acceptable. And depending on what our in-house counsel says, please be aware that there is the potential that future conduct of this nature can potentially be a fireable offense. So I just want to make you aware. There's nothing obviously determined as of yet, but I just want to be sure that we are all of the same understanding that this should not happen again.
I don't think Mary or John want to experience a bad breakup like this again. And
I will agree this will never happen again.
Subsequent issues post. So I thank you for that. I think that could help with sexual harassment in the future and providing a safe and comfortable environment for all of your employees. With that being said, does anybody have any last requests or last anything else?
Nope. Thank you all for all your hard work, and I was glad that we could come to a resolution, so I appreciate it.
Thank you again, everybody. Yes, you guys were great conversationalists, and I really appreciated this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.